talking about the crisis of governance in the Vatican, how that's playing out as the cardinals look for a successor to Pope Benedict, the first pope to resign in 600 years. Joining me tonight, Jean Duchesne, special advisor to the Archbishop of Paris, Fady Fadel, Dean of the American Business School of Paris, specialist in theology and international relations, Marie Lafourcade, journalist and author, and Matthew Bunson, senior fellow at the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology in Indiana in the United States. Now, let's turn to the key question: who's the best candidate for the job? And I'd like to get just a quick look now at some very simple statistics here. 1 in 4 Catholics are in Europe, but the cardinals actually voting in this process are more than half of all those. So does that mean that the next pope is almost certain to be a European? Is there a disconnect there? Marie Lafourcade, what do you think?
No, I don't think it would be a European one, or it would be the victory of the Korea. So I would say even that I hope it won't be an American one.
You hope not?
I hope not, no.
Why not?
Because I think that today the Catholic Church is growing faster in Asia, in Africa, and I think there has been a very domination, of course, historical domination of European cardinals. There are some American ones.
Right. So you'd prefer, but partly because of those problems involving the American Church. Like someone else.
Yes, that's quite a problem. Even if Cardinal Dolan, Archbishop of New York, has good chances, also because he's young.
Matthew Bunson has got something to say about that. But sorry, Matthew, before we go to you, I would like to, because we have a brief window with our Latin American correspondent, Tim Vickery, our correspondent in Rio de Janeiro. Tim, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, some 42% of the world's Catholics live in Latin America. Is there an expectation where you are that the next pope will be from South America?
Well, there don't seem to be too many front runners from this part of the world, and I don't believe that there is a great expectation. You have to remember that the leaders of the Catholic Church over here have presided, and this is especially true in Brazil, the world's biggest Catholic country. They presided over a sharp decline in the fortunes of the Catholic Church in this part of the world. So there are obvious doubts about them. Do they have what it takes to regain lost ground and to win new converts in other parts of the world?
What about Odilo Scherer, though, the Archbishop? His name does crop up quite a lot.
Yes, I think that's probably on age grounds. He's a relatively youthful 63. There are a couple of problems with him. One, that he's not the most colourful of cardinals. There's not a lot of dynamism there, I don't think. There's also a political embarrassment. In the last presidential elections in Brazil in 2010, the National Council of Bishops, or elements of it, published a pamphlet calling on Catholics not to vote for Dilma Rousseff, who then won the elections by a considerable margin. And this movement among the bishops was especially strong in São Paulo, which is Scherer's turf. So that would be a major political problem and a political embarrassment for the Catholic Church.
Tim, but in terms of the big picture, I mean, you say there isn't that much expectation that the next pope will be Brazilian. Is that because of a real sort of gap between the Church in Brazil and as it's perceived in the Vatican?
No, I don't think so at all. I imagine you're asking here about liberation theology, which was a left-wing movement, which was very strong in the Catholic Church over here in the 60s and 70s because of poverty and also as a reaction to the military governments. Well, the liberation theologists were ruthlessly purged from the Church. In fact, some of the leading members of this movement were purged by Ratzinger himself before he came Pope. And this is a key point to remember. Those who've been promoted in the Catholic Church in this part of the world are those who've towed the line of the social and political conservatism of the last two popes, which may have played well in Eastern Europe, hasn't played well at all in this part of the world. And that's a key dilemma for Catholicism in this part of the world, what to do with the current leadership.
Okay, Tim Vickery, thank you so much for joining us from Rio. Now, as we're talking about non-European candidates or possibilities, there's been a lot of betting about the likely successor, and thousands of euros have been spent on those bets. Bookmakers expect that figure to become millions of euros, and one of those cashing in on this growing market is the Irish bookmaker Paddy Power. Let's see what Paddy Power has to say about who's the most likely bet.
The favourites changed a lot over the last couple of weeks since the Pope announced his resignation, but now he's kind of emerged as kind of a clear favourite as Cardinal Turkson from Ghana. So according to the betting, there's a reasonable chance that we'll have our first ever black Pope. He's 11-4 favourite, which is ever so slight favourite ahead of the two Italians, Bertone and Scola, who've both been very big movers in the market. They've shortened in from 12-1 into 3-1 and 16-1 into 4-1 respectively. So the two of them are the ones that'll be the real movers and shakers, I think, at this stage. I mean, I would say one of them will probably be favoured between now and when conclave starts.
Matthew Bunson, we heard that Mr. Turkson seem to be the favourite of the bookies. What do you make of that?
It strikes me as possible, but somewhat unlikely for a variety of different reasons. One, Cardinal Turkson has expressed a number of statements that I think cause some concern among the cardinals during the Synod of Bishops last year. He's also, I'm not sure if the presence of the African cardinals in terms of their size in the College of Cardinals is sufficient enough to carry him forward. If we're looking also in terms of potential candidates outside of Europe, and we're talking, of course, about Brazil, about Latin America, one of the things that we need to look at, and this is where Cardinal Turkson could possibly find a constituency, is bringing together consensus, bridge building from one continent to the other. If we look, for example, at Cardinal Leonardo Sandri, who's the current head of the Congregation for the Eastern Churches, he is from Argentina, but he also is of Italian descent. He has spent a good part of his career in the diplomatic corps of the Holy See. He's a known quantity. He's well respected by the members of the Eastern Catholic Churches. So it is theoretically possible that someone like Cardinal Sandri could really find support, a resonance, both among the Italian curial cardinals and also from among the Latin Americans. So there are a number of candidates there who could theoretically serve as that bridge.
Yes,
I would like to add something, that even though the Pope belongs to a continent or to a part of the world, that does not mean that the priority will be his continent or his country or his world. Since he will be elected as the Pope of the Catholic Church or the whole Church, that means that his priority will be the Catholics, the good of the Catholics among, all the continents and all the world. Even though he is European, he is African, or he is Latin American. For example, with the Pope Benedict XVI, even though he had chosen the name of Benedict, Saint Benedict, the European, but he was so involved in the, in the African issues, in the Latin American issues, in the Middle East issues, and he had set a synod for the Christian in the Middle East 2 years ago in order to boost, their presence, etc. So I think that the choice of the Pope does not depend on the priority that we want to give to a continent or to a part of the world, but according to the charisma and what we are expecting from him as a vitality to the church message and as a youth in the, in the government of the church to bring through this election.
Let's just put into perspective, I mean, some of the names that come up a lot and have also been the bookkeepers' favourites. We've got Angelo Scola, the Archbishop of Milan, at the top left there. Then we've got Christoph Schönbrunn, the Austrian Archbishop. Peter Turkson, we just talked about him, Ghana, the bottom left. And Marc Ouellet, possible contender from Canada. This is, I have to say, one name that it certainly has really been very much at the forefront, Angelo Scola, the Archbishop of Milan. Jean Duchesne, who is your money on?
Well, I wouldn't bet a dime on that. To be to be honest. Well, I just happen to know some of them, you know, personally, because we had opportunities to work together at theological reviews. I also participate in Cardinal Angelo Scola's Oasis Foundation for the dialogue with the Middle East, with the East. Honestly, I do hope none of my friends will become Pope, because I want them to grow old in peace. Now, seriously, I think that what our friends just said is absolutely true. What will be decisive will not be the origin of the final choice. Never mind where the man comes from, provided he has got a broad enough sense of the Church and of its unity, and provided he can provide inspiration on all 5 continents.
Matthew Bunson, do you agree with these with the comments you've just heard? It doesn't matter. They'll go for whoever has the most charisma. It's not a question of continents.
Very much so. And in fact, I'm not sure if I would use the word charisma, but I think they're looking for particular gifts. We need somebody at this point, I think, who is able, as my other guests have pointed out, somebody who has a truly profound grasp of the universal church, somebody who is able to tap into the need, on the one hand, of continuing the growth of the church around the world, particularly in the Third World, in Africa, in Latin America, but who's also able to advance the cause of the new evangelization, the rebuilding of Christian civilization in parts of Europe and the First World. That ultimately comes down to a personality. And one of the reasons that I think this is proven to be a very effective time, and I think Benedict may very well have been calculating this in terms of his resignation, is that as the cardinals move into their general congregations, as they come to meet prior to entering the Sistine Chapel and being locked into the conclave, they're able to discuss amongst themselves what are these key issues. But more than that, I think they're able to assess each other in a spirit of prayer. Consider that they pray together every day. They will be at Mass together. They will be talking with each other. These are important moments of dialogue and discussion. And in much as we saw in 1978 with the second conclave that led to the election of Piero Wojtyła, what was initially considered unimaginable, that you could have a non-Italian for the first time in 422 years, became imaginable, because the Church would always say that it is the role of the Holy Spirit in guiding the College of Cardinals, but it's also the wisdom of finding from amongst themselves exactly the candidate who is the person for this moment in history at the time when the Church needs him the most. Okay. So it does come down to personality, it comes down to prayerfulness, it comes down to those specific qualities that are most ideal in one candidate.
Yes, well, the first thing, I think the very important point has been made, as far as I know, from the testimonies of the few cardinals whom I met and who took part in the preceding conclave. It is that the conclave in itself is a very strong experience for them. Because, you see, they are cardinals, they are the boss wherever they are. And now all, for a few days, they live just as if they were monks together. And there is no abbot. And it is really a monastic life. They spend more time praying, they spend more time in the liturgy than talking about politics or policies. Now, the second thing that is important is that there is a contradiction in the selection of the Pope. Because on the one hand, all the cardinals want somebody who is a little like them, because he understands them. But on the other hand, they know that the Pope must not be just one of the cardinals, that he must have a special charisma, a personality, something exceptional. So he must be both like them and different.
Right. And how do they, I mean, can you just give us a flavor of the process of, I mean, how do they find that balance? How do they actually do it?
Well, you know, they vote twice a day, twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon. And they keep on voting on this rhythm as long as it takes, until one of the candidates gets 2/3.
No, not anymore. Till 1996, you need 2/3 plus 1 vote. majority. And Benedict was the first pope to be elected with a simple majority.
Simple majority?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Oh, yes. Till Jean-Paul II changed the rules in 1996. And
but then, it can go fairly quickly. If you see, because in the first round, in the first ballot, there will be 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 candidates getting votes. And then, of course, the whole process consists in cardinals changing their minds and rallying to one candidate or another. And so it may take a long time. If two strong candidates emerge with, 50-50 or something like this, no clear majority. In this case, it will take time. But anyway, the whole thing, it's not just one vote, it is as many votes as are required.
See, yeah. But how do they, I'm just trying to understand more concretely, do they, for two polls to emerge, do they have to, I mean, do the people do the contenders sort of, I mean, is it anything like a job interview? I mean, how can you explain it to people, outside the Vatican?
No, I mean, as far as we know, there is no debate. There are no candidates saying, come on, vote for me.
Yeah. So what do they do?
No facing debate.
So it is a very unusual type of democracy. Because every voter is absolutely free, and you cannot say that the candidates influence him. And there's one last thing which is very important and should not be forgotten, especially if we remember the famous film, Habemus Papam.
Yes.
See, the candidate who is eventually elected has to answer a very important question. That is to say, whether he accepts or not.
Right, good point. Just very quickly, Matthew Bunson, in 30 seconds, please, on that final point.
Well, the election itself is going to take as long as it takes. Now, the provisions as they exist right now under the rules of the conclave go to 33 votes. And at the end of that, 2 candidates are selected, and they become the 2 candidates who will be voted on, and a 2/3 majority is required. That's the stipulation, especially in the new motu proprio, or the new document that Pope Benedict issued for this coming conclave. So it is possible that we may have a lengthy conclave, but I think if the general congregations and the pre-conclave meetings are successful, they will have a clear consensus on 1 or 2 or 3 candidates, and that will sort itself out very quickly.
Okay, thank you so much to all my guests, Matthew Bunson, Fady Fadel, Jean Duchesne, Marie Lafourcade, and Tim Vickery, our correspondent in Rio de Janeiro. That's all for this edition of The Debate on France 24. Thanks for watching.